Reaction today to the looming September 30th government shutdown deadline. Lawmakers left Washington Friday after the Senate rejected a clean stopgap funding measure that passed the House and would keep the government open through November 21st. Democratic leaders Saturday requested a meeting with President Trump to discuss a plan to keep the government open past the funding deadline. And here's what lawmakers said today.
The American people are on our side, Dana. By almost 2-1, they believe if there's a shutdown, it's going to be caused by Trump, because they know how much they want relief in the health care issue, and they know he's not negotiating. So it's up to them, and I hope and pray that Trump will sit down with us and negotiate a bipartisan bill.
And I think it's disruptive to close the government down. The Republican plan would add $2 trillion to the deficit. The Democrat plan was going to add $3 trillion to the deficit. So this is my point. Both parties are terrible at addressing our deficit.
Joining me now is Florida Congresswoman and former DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz. It's good to see you, my friend. So, Congresswoman, we have Democrats who've accused Republicans of not negotiating their proposals for health insurance subsidies and reversing Medicaid cuts. And Republicans are betting on at least a handful of Democrats to vote with them just to avoid a shutdown. House members are in a home district work period until September 28th. So the question, what happens next with this deadline looming?
Alex, this is mind-blowing. The president and the Republican congressional leadership refuse to just sit down with Democratic leaders and negotiate, making sure that we can cancel the cuts, that we can lower costs, and that we can work together to save Americans' health care coverage. That is what is at stake here. I have been on the Appropriations Committee for nearly my entire congressional career. I have not seen an instance in which a president isn't even willing in 11 or 10 or 11 days from the end of the fiscal year to sit down and discuss and negotiate how to bring us together and avoid a crisis that would be in fully the Republicans' lap.
Well, let's see if that changes anytime soon. We can hope, because a government shutdown, nobody wants that. Let's pivot to what's happening ahead of this week's UN General Assembly meeting. You have Britain, Canada, and Australia, who've all today confirmed they now formally recognize Palestinian statehood. What is your response? Do you think it'll pressure Israel to ease at all in the humanitarian crisis in Gaza?
My response to any unilateral action by another nation to a situation that has always been one where the nations come together and we have previous agreements in place that need to reach their final status of negotiations to decide on 2 states for 2 people, which I support, a democratic Jewish state of Israel living side by side in peace with security guarantees with a Palestinian state. It is not the business of any country to unilaterally declare statehood for any one nation. In the midst of the chaos right now, with Hamas having brutally attacked Israel on October 7th, slaughtering 1,200 people, taking 251 people captive, 50 of which they still hold, either the remains or living individuals. It's an outrage. We need to make sure that we use the peaceful process of negotiation to bring people back to the table. The hostages need to get home, and we need to make sure that Israel has security guarantees that make sure that they will never again have a terrorist entity living on their doorstep ready to attack them.
Do you think if the hostages, and you mentioned the 50 remains and living, were to be returned, that would cool things somewhat? Just that singular thing?
Cool. It would bring it to an end. That is what needs to happen. We have 48 humans who are either alive and being held captive in dark tunnels, being starved by terrorists who took them captive, and the result of an unprovoked attack by a terrorist organization, and the remains of about 24 others. Israel has never provoked attacks. They want nothing but peace, to live side by side in peace with their neighbors. They release the hostages, and the war comes to an end. That ball is fully in Hamas's court. And peaceful nations around the world need to help bring that result about.
Let's move to what happened on Friday with the House Oversight Committee interviewing former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Alex Acosta, questioning him about his role in that 2008 plea deal shielding Jeffrey Epstein from federal charges and sending him to prison for only 13 months. You joined Republican Congressman Tim Burchett announcing a bill closing all the legal loopholes to better protect sexual abuse survivors. Explain what this Courtney Wild Reinforcing Crimes Victim Act, or Victims' Rights Act, hopes to achieve, and do you expect bipartisan support for it?
I do, and I'm thankful to Congressman Burchett for joining me and reintroducing this bill that would ensure that we could never again have a situation like what Alex Acosta refused to say was the wrong move on Friday did. Not ensuring that the Crime Victims' Rights Act, that the victims of human and sexual trafficking of Jeffrey Epstein didn't get their day in court and have the ability to know about the plea deal, nor protest it in court as the federal law required. Our legislation closes down all those loopholes, as you said, and would ensure that that kind of sweetheart deal without crime victims knowing could never happen again. And Alex Acosta had the nerve, the cojones on Friday to say, to victim shame the survivors again by suggesting that they weren't going to be credible witnesses. How dare he suggest that hundreds and hundreds of young women, many of whom were teenagers at the time, who were raped, brutally assaulted, put into sexual slavery, that they wouldn't have been credible witnesses. I've heard these women's stories. So many of us have on both sides of the aisle. Alex Acosta should be ashamed of himself. He should be shunned, and Republicans and Democrats need to come together to make sure that what he did to these victims can never happen again.
Okay. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, thank you so much for your time. Always good to see you.